So how does the father's
Yeah.
involvement influences the executive function development? You talked a little bit about the language, but maybe you could highlight like most critical points, like two, three.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to, sadly, we don't have a lot of research on executive function. I'm doing a couple of studies this summer. I'm doing something with self-regulation right now, and we've done a couple of studies with compliance with young children. What we can tell is that when we observe father and child interactions, and we have a very cruel protocol, we give toys, very shiny, novel, new toys when we come to someone's home, and we ask dad and child to play. And after 5 minutes, that seems nothing to a child who just found a new toy. We say to dad, can you put them away? Can you clean up? And so that request requires that the child regulates his desire to keep on playing with the toy, and the father makes this child do something that is not really fun, to put this shiny red new truck away when the child wants to keep playing. So we code that, and we'll videotape it and we code it. And what we find is that a lot of dads are not shy about taking a behavioral approach that we might think it's a no-no with moms. So the child says, okay, did you hear her? We have to clean up. And the child is like, I don't think so. He does it again, and if the child doesn't do it, and the father thinks, these are little guys, 24 months. He's not understanding me. He just removes the child, physically takes his baby, puts him somewhere else, and he said, we're done. And the baby is like, wait, I didn't like that, but I guess we're done, right? And so with girls, a little different, because girls' speech is better. So fathers tend to reason more with girls. These are just small studies, so I can't generalize. But in general, there's a tendency. Fathers say, it's over. It is over. That's it. There's no, and also they model a lot of this behavior. It's like, you know what? One dad had a cleanup song. It's like, you all put together, like just doing crazy things. And so now it's fun. It's interesting. You were putting away the toys, and the dad and the child is following. All of that is possible because the child wants to please his dad, and that relationship is strong enough that child doesn't want to disappoint the dad. If the relationship is less strong and less stable, kid is not interested in what the dad has to say. So this self-regulatory behaviors that we find with this dyadic stuff, the child can inhibit, can remember, can change course when the relationship with dad is very synchronous. Like, this is my dad, I want to please him, so I'm going to stay. Moms is a little different because we tend to give up after a good cry. We go, oh my gosh, she's crying, so let's stop. So we tend to be a little more inconsistent in our approach to regulating kids' behavior. But it's such a joy to watch a child, a 24 months old little girl who has a really strong relationship with her dad. They're very synchronous. And then we say to her, here is this snack, don't eat it until. So you have to inhibit some desire. You have to plan, how are you going to do this? How are you not going to eat it? There's some planning involved and execution of this plan. So you can just see all this little girl. She is like on vacation. She's like, doo, 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 doo. She's touching her hair. It's like, but there's other boys who are like, cannot, like they eat the toy, the candy, the minute you give it to them, that little cookie. But so that when the relationship is really strong, we find that those children are better able to regulate themselves, and also to plan, to remember things, to have this broader executive functioning skills. Routines are also important, and fathers are more likely to keep them in some, especially even though they might be unorthodox. So dad comes at 11 o'clock at night from his second job. That's when we're going to hang out with my kids. So even though that routine happens really late, there is that routine and the expectation that also helping children.
You said if the relationships with the father is strong, so that can predict something. So how do you know that the relationships are strong?
I know that's a hard question. I presented some findings at my colleague's University in New York the other day, and someone asked me the same question, and I have this video of this child, this baby, and a dad. And there's a spark there. Like I mean, I've seen this video 1,000 times, Kate, and I just get this joy every time I see it. The same thing. And I want to be able to code joy. I think that is the beginning of something. When the dad says, "Oh my God, look at you," and there's this joy, just joy. Mm-hmm. I don't know when it starts. I want to capture it. I think it might begin way before, when, you know, in the prenatal period, when we give men the opportunity to start really cognitively becoming a dad. You know, what is it like? My life's going to change. He's going to look like me. I'm going to take him to the ball game. No, I'm going to do, what if he's a girl? You know, when you start planning and thinking, I think that relationship might begin there, when you have this, you cannot wait to see this child, mm-hmm. right? And it's like having a visitor coming, and you go, like my husband used to say, it's like having visitors and they're never leaving. You know, this expectation, then it's so joyful. I mean, I think it begins with joy. And, you know, we try to assess it by looking at dyadic relationships, our sensitivity, our temperament, you know, there's some children that are more reactive, I would say, where every little thing, you know, they don't go to sleep until it's complete silence, and other children sleep under an earthquake, you know, and so parenting has to adjust to those two types of children. There's not a right or wrong. There's no good and bad. That's just biology, and so there's so much that is on father's plate at the beginning. But when they figure out that, like one dad told me one time, he's like, it was so hard because all the help was for her, not for me. But I was struggling. I was depressed. I didn't know what to do. She looked so little, and I thought I could not do anything for her. Also because mom is saying, you cannot soothe her, I can. But he said when he got it, he figured it out. And then she told him, Daddy, I love you. He said, my world, I feel like, oh my God, I will go to hell and back for you, you know? I think those moments, I want to capture them. I want to capture them better to understand, how do we promote them? How do men think about this? We don't give men the opportunity to get emotional about the children. You know, a child, I don't know if you have kids, but children, right? I mean, there is nothing you cannot do for a child, which you would never, you know, it never occurred to me that would be me. And I was like, oh my God, I would do horrible things I would never imagine that I would do. Not horrible things, but, you know, putting my hand out to touch someone who got sick, like, ugh. But with a child, you do everything. Fathers are the same. And I think there's a very lonely period at the beginning when they're not given that space to learn, to figure it out. I mean, I've made tons of mistakes. I mean, gosh, right? But we give moms a lot more leeway than we did when we do that.